By the end of 1989, it looked clear that Doctor Who would not be returning for 1990 on BBC One. The head of theory, Peter Cregan, and the BBC One controller, Jonathan Powell, had their plans to finally lay to rest Doctor Who. After some debate, it was decided to move the show to BBC Two after Alan Yentob offered to take over the show. Doctor Who would live for another day. Early into the year, Andrew Cartmel had announced he had left the role of script editor to work on Casualty. He said that if Doctor Who was cancelled, he wouldn't want to be left without a job. Replacing him would be Ben Aronovich, who wrote Battlefield and Remembrance of the Daleks. Furthermore, John Nathan Turner stepped down as producer, and Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred announced their departure from the show. Replacing the character of Ace would be an upper-class cat burglar named Katie Tillinger, played by Julia Swahala. She would debut in part 1 of episode 3. A later addition to the season would be another new companion named Henry Lyons, played by Michael French. He joins the TARDIS at the end of the season and into the next along with a new Doctor. The first story would have been Earth Aid, 5th to the 19th of September by Ben Aronovich. Welcome aboard the Space Vessel Vancouver. Its mission, to guard a vast shipment of grain from the Earth to the planet Phaethon's home. Its captain is called Ace. She seems a little unsure of herself. In fact, some might almost think she was new to the job. Its medical officer is simply called the Doctor, and he perhaps is not all he seems either. With mysterious ships target the Vancouver, Ace and the Doctor are pushed to the limit. Meanwhile, they're somewhat nasty in the grain containers, and it's not very happy. The next story would be Ice Time, 26th to the 17th of October by Mark Platt. The Doctor and Ace have arrived in London, 1967. The government is seeking a new weapon that will give it mastery in upcoming wars. What if the secret of the Martian relics? After legendary warlord Caesar returns to life, the Doctor is faced with some of his oldest and deadliest enemies. The fate of the Earth and the future of Ace are now intertwined. This will be the last story for Ace as she leaves the TARDIS at the end to join the Academy on Gallifrey. The next story would be Crime of the Century, 24th of October to the 14th of November by Colin Brake. The year is 1990. In London, safecracker Katie Tillinger breaks into a house and finds more than family jewels. Meanwhile, a spaceship has crash-landed in Soviet territory. The ship, alongside its weapons and its crew, have been captured and imprisoned by the USSR. The new leader of the USSR, Vadim Frenkin, have plans to conquer the world with their newfound toys. With the threat of a new world war on their hands, the Doctor and Katie must uncover the truth about the USSR's new leader and stop a war which could lead to Earth's destruction. This story would be the first story for the new companion, Katie Tillinger, played by Julia Swahala. Final story would be Animal, 21st of November to the 5th of December by Andrew Cartmel. Margrave University 2001, and Katie Tillinger is enjoying her first trip into the future. For the Doctor, there are mysteries to solve. What are the alien creatures imprisoned in the science labs? And what are the true motives of the student Scobie and his followers? With enemies on all sides, the Doctor teams up with his old friend Brigadier Winfred Bambera and unit in a battle for the future of the whole world. But will the Doctor make it out alive? This story would introduce the new companion, Sergeant Henry Lyons, played by Michael French, a unit soldier from 2001. Notably, however, this will be Sylvester McCoy's last story as the Doctor. And at the end of the episode, he, Katie and Henry get into the TARDIS, and the 7th Doctor regenerates into the 8th Doctor, who would be played by Richard Griffiths. Ian Fraser and Ben Aronovich started planning the season in 1990. They both agreed and wanted the show to become a lot more darker. Richard Griffiths was cast as the 8th Doctor. His incarnation was originally planned to be a continuation of the 7th Doctor's characterisation of being a dark, manipulative chess player type of character, but instead was decided for 8 to be like the 1st Doctor. As there is a new Doctor, the title sequence is different. They are the Sylvester McCoy titles, but the theme is replaced by a new one, composed by Kevin McCulloch, and McCoy's faith is replaced with Griffiths's. The first story would be Last of the Daleks, 7th of September to the 28th of September by Ben Aronovich. After his regeneration, the Doctor lands on a human colony world. Katie and Henry are distressed as the Doctor has changed and they don't know why. Meanwhile, a mining project is underway as a scientific group on the planet have discovered an old escape pod buried within the ground, containing the creator of the Daleks, Davros. When the time comes, the Daleks will attack, and it'll be up to the Doctor to stop them, but with random headaches and faints, what will he be able to do? The next story would be Nightthoughts, 5th of October to the 19th of October by Edward Young. A remote Scottish mansion, 5 bickering academics are haunted by ghosts from their pasts. Reluctantly, they offer shelter to the Doctor and his companions, Katie and Henry. Katie, already troubled by a vivid nightmare, is further disturbed by the nighttime appearance of a whistling hooded apparition. Henry tries to befriend a young housemaid, Sue. Sue knows secrets. She knows why the academics have assembled here, and she knows why they are all so afraid. But Sue's lips are sealed, preferring to communicate with her disturbing toy, Happy the rabbit. And then the killing begins, gruesome deaths that lead the Doctor, Katie and Henry to discover the grisly truth behind the academics' plans, and as ghosts of the past become ghosts of the present, to recognise that sometimes death can be preferable to life. The next story would be The Hostage, 26th of October to the 16th of November by Neil Penswick. In an attempt to lighten up the Doctor's mood, his companions Katie and Henry suggest an investigation of an interplanetary mercenary terrorising a planet single-handedly. The TARDIS materialises at the worst possible time, and the three are threatened by multiple types of threats. The Doctor and Katie are soon kidnapped by the mercenary, and Henry discovers the dangers that he must face alone. The final story would be Network, 23rd of November to the 7th of December by Mark Platt. The Doctor arrives at a museum in London after being summoned by his old friend Winfred Bambera. Strange goings-on are happening there, most commonly at night. Electrical storms and power drainings. It lies with the curator of the museum, who is an old friend of the Doctor's. This story would be The Return of the Rani, played by Kate O'Mara, but at the time there was something more significant about the story, and that was it was credited as being the final Doctor Who story to ever air on television, as the crew didn't think they would get another season. So, in a similar type of thing that happened with Survival, the 8th Doctor would give a speech at the end and end it with "Nothing lasts forever." However, under the Aronovich and Fraser regime, the show had improved just by the 4 stories, and the series was renewed and it would go on into 1992. Episode 4 puts an end to the fan-named Cartmel Master Plan with Lungbarrow, which revealed more of the Doctor's backstory and put more mystery into the show and the character himself. The first story would be The Legend of Merlin, 5th of September to the 19th of September by Ben Aronovich. Many years ago, the Doctor and his friends battled against the evil Morgaine, an enemy from the Doctor's future. Now, several years into the Doctor's future, he finds himself arriving in Morgaine's past. The time is now. He must banish Morgaine and claim the role of Merlin so that his young self is to do battle in her future. The next story would be Nightshade, 26th of September to the 17th of October by Mark Gatiss. Katie and Henry have never known the Doctor to be so withdrawn and melancholic. He's avoiding their company, seeking refuge in the forgotten and labyrinth passages of his ancient time machine. Perhaps he will find the peace he yearned for on his favourite planet, Earth, in the isolated village of Crook Marsham to be precise. In 1968, the year of peace, love and understanding, but one by one the villagers are being killed. The Doctor has to act, but for once he seems helpless, indecisive, powerless. What are the signals from space that are bombarding the radio telescope on the moor? What is the significance of the local legend from the Civil War, and what if the aeons old power that the Doctor is unable to resist? The next story would be Illegal Alien, 24th of October to the 14th of November by Mike Tucker and Robert Perry. Britain is at war. Night after night, the Luftwaffe bombing London. A serial killer dubbed the Limehouse Lurker is stalking the rubble-strewn streets, but a deadlier threat falls from the sky in the shape of a sinister silver sphere. Cody McBride, ex-Pat American Private Eye, sees the spaceship crash land and split open and glimpses something emerging from within, but the military dismisses account of events. The sphere is simply a new German secret weapon that has malfunctioned in some way. What else could it be? Arriving amid the chaos, the Doctor, Katie and Henry are the only people to believe McBride. The sphere bears all the hallmarks of sophisticated alien technology, and whatever was inside is now loose in London. Before long, they have embarked on a trail that brings them face to face with hidden Nazi operatives and some very old enemies. The final story would be Lungbarrow, 21st of November to the 5th of December by Mark Platt. All is not well on Gallifrey. Henry is having someone else's nightmares, Katie is talking to herself, Leela has stumbled on a murderous family conspiracy, and Lady President Romana foresees one of the most troubling times in her planet's history. At the root of all this is an ancient and terrible place, the House of Lungbarrow, in the southern mountains of Gallifrey. Something momentous is happening there, but the house has inexplicably gone missing. 673 years ago, the Doctor left that his family in that forgotten house, abandoned, disgraced and resentful. They have waited, and now he's home at last. To celebrate 30 years of Doctor Who, the decision was made to have a 1 hour 90-minute TV movie to celebrate at the end of the season. Ian Fraser and Ben Aronovich announced their departures at the end of season 30, believing it was now the right time to leave. Furthermore, Julia Swahala announced her departure, replacing Katie with a new companion, Bernice Summerfield, played by Lisa Bowerman. With Alan Yentob now controller of BBC One, he moved the show back to its rightful home with a bigger budget. A brand new title sequence was produced. Along with this, a much darker theme tune done by Mark Erv, which contained elements of Delia Derbyshire and Peter Howell themes. And now, let's get into the stories. The first story would be Transit, 24th of July to the 7th of August by Ben Aronovich. It's the ultimate mass transit systems, a network of interstitial tunnels that bind the planets of the solar system together. Earth to Pluto in 40 minutes with the super safe non-premium off-peak travel card, but something is living in the network, chewing its way to the very heart of the system and leaving a trail of death and mutation behind it. Once again, a reluctant Doctor is dragged into human history, back down amongst the Joy Boys, free service chess fans, politicians and floovies, and one-man human being is another psychotic killing machine. Once again, the Doctor is all that stands between humanity and its own mistakes. The story would have many fan-pleasing Easter eggs, such as the fall transit system being created after the failure of Tiamat from the Feeds of Death, a reference to the Ice Warriors, and Kadiatu being a defendant from the Brigadier. The next story would be The Highest Defiance, 14th of August to the 28th of August by Gareth Roberts. Many legends speak of this world, home of an ancient empire destroyed by its own greatest achievement, the highest defiance, the pinnacle of technological discovery, when the TARDIS alerts the Doctor, Katie and Henry to the presence of an enormous temporal fluctuation on a large green unremarkable planet. They are not to know of any connection with the legend, but the connection is there, and it will lead them into a conflict with the monstrous Chelonians, with their contempt for human parasites, into adventure with a group of youngsters whose musical taste will suddenly became dangerously significant and force them to face Shelducker, the most wanted criminal in the galaxy. The next story would be Love and War, 4th of September to 25th of September by Paul Cornell. It's the 27th century and heaven, a human colony world for both humans and draconians, a final place of peace for those lost during wartime. The Doctor arrives on a tribal mission to find a book, or so he says, and Katie, wandering around Joycetown, becomes involved with a charismatic traveller called Jan, but the Doctor is strenuously opposed to romance. What is he trying to prevent? Is he planning for more deadly games connected with the coffins revered by the mysterious Church of Vacuum and the unusual arch that marks the location of a secret building below ground? Archaeologist Bernice from the field thinks so. Her destiny is inextricably linked with that of the Doctor, but even she may not be able to save Katie from the Time Lord's plans. This time, has the Doctor gone too far? This will be the last story for Katie Tillinger, played by Julia Fruhala. In this episode, Katie begins to form a bond with one of the travellers named Jan. We would have seen the story, the two of them begin to form a proper bond as Katie begins to fall for Jan. The Doctor meets a woman called Professor Bernice from the field and helps her open their way to their Heaven Lights Observatory and translates from writing they found to discover, plus by Wraith known as the Houthi, to use heaven to create an army of the dead. Knowing the danger the Houthi can cause, the Doctor orders Bernice to quickly unearth the observatory, which could detect otherwise invincible Houthi spears. And knowing that Katie's friend Jan had been infected by a fibre, the Doctor orders him to travel to the sphere after using Brother Phaedra of the Vacuum Church to summon the sphere to pewter space. The Doctor sends a message to Jan to ignite the sphere, which kills him in the process and saves heaven. Returning for Katie, the Doctor discovers that Katie is furious with him for killing Jan. Katie makes her mind up. She wants to go home. The Doctor, Henry and Bernice take her back to 1990, where Katie tells the Doctor that she wishes that their paths never cross again. And at the end of the episode, the Doctor asks Bernice to become his new companion, to which she accepts. The next story would be Blood Heat, 2nd of October to the 16th of October by Jim Mortimer. The TARDIS is attacked by an alien force. Bernice is flung into the vortex when the Doctor and Henry crash land on Earth. In an attack by dinosaurs convinces the Doctor that he and Henry have arrived in the Jurassic era, but when they find woman being hunted by intelligent reptiles, he begins to suspect that something is very wrong. Then they meet the embittered Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, leading the remnants of UNIT in a hopeless fight against the Silurians who rule his world, and they find out that it all began when the Doctor died. This story sees the Doctor, Bernice and Henry land on an Earth where the third Doctor died at the end of Doctor Who and Silurians, and we see a different versions of the UNIT family, including the Brigadier, Benton, Liz Shaw and Joe Grant. we would have seen the Doctor try to make peace between the humans and the Silurians, which they eventually do. However, the Doctor soon learns that this universe is draining the life out of their universe, so the Doctor has to destroy it. At the end of the story, the Doctor destroys the universe, but it further strains the friendship between the Doctor and Henry. The next story would be Conquest of the Daleks, 23rd of October to the 6th of November by Colin Brake. With Davros missing, the war between the Renegade and Imperial Daleks has ended. The two forces have moved their efforts from fighting each other to conquering other worlds. The Doctor, Henry and Benny arrive on Earth, where they discover that the Daleks have come to deceive one another. What will happen in the final battle of the Dalek Civil War? This will be the final story in the ongoing Dalek Civil War arc, which began all the way in the 5th Doctor's era. We would have seen in this story that the Imperial and the Renegade Daleks work together and try and conquer Earth. However, unbeknownst to both sides, both of them plan to deceive each other. And then we get a big, massive Dalek battle scene between the Imperials and the Renegades, to which all the Renegades are wiped out and the Imperials win the war. Now with the Renegades gone, the Daleks have their plan to wipe out the Earth using a machine that can only affect humans and not Daleks. However, the Doctor manages to steal the device and rework it so it will destroy the Daleks instead. And then the Doctor activates it and all the Daleks end up dead. The final story would be The Lords of Time, 20th of November by Ben Aronovich. A ruthless dictator has overthrown Romana, and in pursuit of recognition on the intergalactic stage, Lord President Arcadian hosts a peace conference with all of the Time Lords with deadly foes, and the Doctor is invited. However, things go from bad to worse as relations become sour, and Gallifrey is moved into the firing line. As it happens though, the 8th Doctor wasn't the only one invited, and more than one Doctor is needed to tackle the deadly forces of the Daleks, 5 men from Tarans, Ice Warriors, the Vigons, the Vord, and worst of all, the Time Lords themselves. This would be the 30th anniversary of Doctor Who. The main villain of the story would have been Lord President Arcadian, who has overthrown Romana and is holding a peace conference with the Daleks, Cybermen, Fontarans, Ice Warriors, the Zygons and the Vord. And Doctor 3 to 8 have been invited to the peace conference. However, this is all part of Arcadian's plan to use those forces and take over the universe. And those armies are sent to different planets, so it's up to Doctors 3 to 8 to stop them. The 3rd Doctor and Joe Grant go to the human colony world of Reforia. He must stop the Cybermen from wiping out the planet using a device that can only affect human DNA. The 4th Doctor ends up on Varos with Sarah Jane. They will stop the Vord from causing the new democratic government to collapse. The 5th Doctor lands on Draconia with Niffa and will stop the Fontaran from turning it into a Fontaran breeding ground. The 6th Doctor and Perry land on a colony world where the Ice Warriors have planned to lower the temperature to sub-zero. The 7th Doctor and 8th land on a planet which is similar to ancient Egypt on the furthest, where the Vigons were planning to make it a Vigon war planet, and the 8th Doctor, Bernice and Henry land in present-day London, where they must stop a full-on Dalek invasion. While defeating the Daleks, the Doctor gets help from Winfried Bambera, Unit and Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. In the end, the Doctors defeat their enemies and return to Gallifrey, and once everyone is reunited, Arcadian knows he's outnumbered. However, he has one last trick up his sleeve and attempts to get the Chancery Guard to kill the Doctors, but the Chancery Guard under the command of Leela arrest Arcadian, and Romana is reinstated to Lord President and sentenced with Arcadian to be thrown into the bottomless pit. The story ends with Doctor 3 to 8 saying their farewells to one another, and after everyone says their farewells, they return to their rightful times and places. Replacing Ian Fraser would be production manager Stephen Garwood. and replacing Ben Aronovich as script editor would be Colin Brake. While Garwood and Brake would retain the darkness of stories, they wanted to make the story similar to that of Doctor Who's main competitor of the 1990s, Star Trek. Brake also wanted to build on companions more, as he felt this was lacking with Katie. Griffiths' Doctor proved popular to the general public and was starting to gain the show's popularity back, with most of the stories last season and this season averaging somewhat viewing figures from the Peter Davison era. The first story would be Legacy, 9th of July to the 30th of July by Gary Ruffell. The Doctor is pursuing a master criminal. The trail leads to Peladon, a desolate world once home to a barbaric feudal society. Now the Galactic Federation is attempting to bring prosperity and civilization to the planet, but not all Peladonians report the changes, and when ancient relics are stolen from their citadel, the representatives of the Federation are blamed. The Doctor suspects the Ice Warrior delegation, but before long the Time Lord himself is arrested for the crime and sentenced to death. Elsewhere, interplanetary mercenaries are bringing one of the galaxy's most evil artifacts to Peladon, apparently on the Doctor's instruction. Henry is pursuing a dangerous mission on another world, and Bernice from the field is getting friendly, perhaps too friendly, with the Ice Warriors she's studied for so long. The players are making the final move in a devious and lethal plan, but for once, it isn't the Doctor's. The next story would be The Left-Handed Hummingbird, 6th of August to the 20th of August by Kate Orman. 1968, Christian Alvarez meets the Doctor in London. 1978, the Great Temple of the Aztecs is discovered. 1980, John Lennon is murdered in New York. 1994, a gunman runs amok in Mexico City. Each time Christian is there, each time he experiences the blue, a traumatic psychic shock. Only the Doctor can help him, but the Doctor has problems of his own. Following the events to an alternate Earth ruled by the Silurians, the Doctor knows that someone or something has been tinkering with time. Now he finds that events in his own past have been altered, and a lethal force from South America's prehistory have been released. The Doctor, Henry and Bernice travel to the Aztec Empire in 1487, to London in the swinging 60s, and to the sinking of the Titanic as they attempt to rectify the temporal faults and survive the attacks of the living god Huitzilopochtli. The next story would be Conundrum, 27th of August to the 17th of September by Steve Lyons. A killer is stalking the streets of Arendelle. The victims are found one each day, drained of blood, and if that seems strange, it's nothing compared to the town's inhabitants. The Doctor, Henry and Bernice think they're investigating a murder mystery, but it's all much more bizarre than that, and much more dangerous. Someone has interfered with the Doctor's past again, and he's landed in a place he knows he wants destroyed. This time, there can be no escape. The next story would be The Crystal Bucephalus, 24th of September to the 8th of October by Craig Hinton. The Crystal Bucephalus is a restaurant patronised by the highest echelons of society. In the 10th millennium, the guests are projected back in time to sample the food and drink of a bygone age. When the galaxy's most notorious crime boss is murdered in the Bucephalus, the Doctor, Henry and Bernice are immediately arrested for the killing. To prove their innocence, they must track down the perpetrators of the slaughter and sabotage and uncover a conspiracy which has been 5,000 years in the making. The next story would be Goth Opera, 15th of October to 29th of October by Paul Cornell. Manchester, 1993. The vampires of Great Britain have received the message. The long-awaited arrival of their evil messiah is imminent. It's time for the recruitment drive. On holiday in Tasmania with Henry and the Doctor, Bernice is attacked by a demonic child. She escapes unharmed, except for 2 small wounds in her neck. Why are the defendants of the great vampire so desperate to obtain the blood of a Time Lord, and what is their connection to a forbidden Gallifreyan cult? The final story would be Tragedy Day, 5th of November to the 19th of November by Gareth Roberts. In Empire City on the planet O'Leary, It's time for the annual Tragedy Day, when the privileged few celebrate their generosity to the masses. But this year, something is different. Hideous creatures infest the waters around an island that doesn't officially exist. Assassins arrive to carry out a killing that may endanger the entire universe. A being known as the Supreme One tests horrific weapons, and the secret order of monks observe the growing chaos 5 minutes after arrival on the rail. The TARDIS crew know they want to leave, but Henry's imprisoned in a sinister refugee camp, and Bernice and the Doctor are in the custody of the brutal police gang. There's no way out. Early on, Richard Griffiths announced that he would be stepping down as the 8th Doctor at the end of season 32, as he felt that he had stayed long enough. This season would have a slight increase in episodes. Now it would have 7 stories and 22 episodes. The first story would be Return of the Living Dad, 8th to the 22nd of July by Kate Orman. Bernice Summerfield was 7 when her father disappeared. They say he turned and ran from the Daleks in battle. They say he was a coward. They were wrong. For many years, Benny has searched for her father. The Doctor takes her and Henry to England, 1983. There she at last discovers Admiral Isaac Summerfield, head of a motley crew of aliens, sidekicks and fanboys. Their mission? To save extraterrestrials stranded on Earth. But what is Benny's father doing 500 years in his own past, and why has he been waiting for the Doctor to arrive? Can Benny really trust the man she's been looking for her whole life? The next story would be The Romance of Crime, 29th of July to the 12th of August by Gareth Roberts. The TARDIS brings the Doctor, Bernice and Henry to the Rock of Judgment, a court, a prison and a place of execution built into a rocket-powered asteroid. There they become embroiled in an investigation by the system's finest lawmen. What connects the macabre gallery of artist Menlo Stokes with the flauta of the survey team on a distant planet? Why is Margot, Chief of Security, behaving so strangely? And which old enemy for the Doctor are aboard the unmarked spaceship making its way towards the Rock? The next story would be Shakedown, 19th of August to the 2nd of September by Terence Dix. For thousands of years, the Fontarans and the Rutans have fought a brutal war across the galaxy. Now the Fontarans have a secret plan to destroy the Rutan race, a secret plan the Doctor is racing against time to uncover. The next story would be Venusian Lullaby, 9th of September to 23rd of September by Paul Leonard. Venus is dying. When the Doctor, Bernice and Henry arrive, they find an ancient and utterly alien civilization on the verge of oblivion. War is brewing between those who are determined to accept death and those desperate to salvation, whatever the cost. Then a spacefaring race arrive, offering to rescue the Venusians by moving them all to Earth 3 billion years before mankind is due to evolve. Are the newcomers' motives as pure as they appear, and will the Doctor allow them to save his oldest friends by sacrificing the future of humanity? The next story would be Damaged Goods, 30th of September to the 21st of October by Russell T Davies. The Doctor, Bernice and Henry arrive at the Quadrant, a troubled council block in Thatcher's Britain. There's a new drug on the streets, a drug that's killing to a plan. Somehow the very ordinary people of the Quadrant are involved, and so amidst the growing chaos, a bizarre trio moves into number 43. The year is 1987. A dead drug dealer has risen from the grave. An ancient weapon is concealed beneath human tragedy, but the Doctor soon discovers that the things people are doing for their children can be every bit as dangerous as any alien menace. As he uncovers the link between a special child, an obsessive woman, and a desperate bargain made one dark Christmas Eve. The next story would be Iceberg, 20th of October to the 11th of November by David Banks. In 2006, the world was about to be overwhelmed by disaster that might destroy human civilization. The inversion of Earth's magnetic pole, deep in an Antarctic base, the Flipback team is frantically devising a system to reverse the change in polarity. Above them, the FF Elysium carries its jet-set passengers on an ultimate cruise. On board is Ruby Duval, a journalist, sent to record the flip-back moment. Instead, she finds a man called the Doctor and his friends Bernice and Henry, and she finds old enemies of the Doctor, silver giants, at work beneath the ice. The final story would be Rebirth, 18th of November to the 2nd of December by Ben Aronovich. The TARDIS lands on Earth in London 1999 on New Year's Eve, but the Master's body is decaying, and amongst the Londoners celebrating the new year is the Master, and soon the Doctor and the Master are going to have one last confrontation. This would have been Richard Griffiths' final story as the Doctor. This story would have been a lot like the TV movie, however, the half-human stuff wouldn't be in it. The atomic clock, Chang Li helping the Master, and the Master's execution would also not be in it. However, the Master does kill the Doctor at the end of the story, and he supposedly dies at the end also. The Doctor's final words are, "I think this might be the end. After all, nothing lasts forever." And then he regenerates. Bernice and Henry look on as the old man's face and body begins to reshape and reform into a much younger man. Then the regeneration completes and we're introduced to the 9th Doctor, who would be portrayed by Ioan Gruffudd. And then the episode ends. Season 33 felt quite dramatic in contrast to recent seasons, due to it not only featuring a new Doctor under Ioan Gruffudd, but also a new companion in his debut story, unlike 8 Katie and Henry, who had joined at different points in season 27. Other than Garwood and Brake remaining on, along with major crew members, everything else felt vastly different due to the BBC slowly progressing the competitiveness with other American sci-fi shows, which would be noted with the frequent use of alien planets in recent years. The new companion would be Lillian Jones, a policewoman from present-day 1996, played by Chloe Annette. As expected by now, new titles and theme for a new Doctor. Unlike other title sequences, this one is vastly different to all others, since the BBC wanted to push an American feel within the show. It was suggested for the new titles to be made by an American VFX company, that of Santa Barbara Studios, who also did the title for Star Trek Voyager. Additionally, this made the title sequence look even better in execution, with a simple structure of various shots around Earth with the occasional appearance of the TARDIS. It would retain the basic elements such as a Griffith's face and the TARDIS, as well as the iconic theme. Garwood decided to bring on composer David Ferguson, who composed the music for 1991's Dark Season and had a slower and more synth-heavy feel to it. The bass line and the main melody were used for the opening credits. The middle 8 was heard in the closing credits. Lisa Bowerman and Michael French decided to make season 33 their last, after give the new companion the opportunity with the new Doctor. Plans were originally made to introduce a new companion in the opening episode of season 34, however it was decided to make the character of Lillian Jones, as portrayed by Chloe Annette, from the first episode a full-time regular. And now, let's get into the episodes. The first story would be The Plague of Death, 20th of July to the 10th of August by Colin Brake. The TARDIS comes crashing down to Earth and Brigadier Bambera takes in Bernice and Henry and a strange man calling himself the Doctor. Something has gone wrong with the regeneration, and the Doctor is experiencing migraines and amnesia. Can Bernice and Henry trust this man? Meanwhile, a scientific research facility is creating a deadly new plague to spread across London, and policewoman Lillian Jones is prepared to stop them on her own. Can the Doctor stop the plague with constant faints and memory loss? The next episode would be The English Way of Death, written by Gareth Roberts. The Doctor and Lillian visit London in the sweltering summer of 1930, but the TARDIS is warning of time pollution, and that's not the only problem. What connects the isolated Sussex resort of Nutchurch and the secret society run by the eccentric Percy Clothed? Why has millionaire Hepworth Stackhouse dismissed his staff and hired assassin Julia Orlostro? And what is the truth behind the infernal vapour known only as Zodal? With the heat building, the Doctor and Lillian set out to solve the mysteries. The next episode will be The Time Ravagers, written by Nicholas Briggs. The Doctor and Lillian land on Temperoth. Could it be that the legendary time being, the Temperon, is not a legend after all? Or are the Daleks up to their old tricks again? The next episode will be Life and Death, written by Paul Cornell. The Doctor and Lillian land on the planet Beta Scorpii 5, but all is not well. President Holdart is terminally ill, but when some unearthly beings arrive on the planet, claiming to be healers, the Doctor is left unhappy. Lillian, on the other hand, welcomes the help, along with the President, but the Doctor knows that life can't last forever, and the aliens are up to something very unpleasant. The next episode will be The Resurrection Game, written by Russell T Davies. On Belurden, the tyrannical dictator Valorth begins the annual Resurrection Game, where 15 of his people have to fight with their lives to the death to solve a series of mysteries and challenges. But these are the same people who competed the previous year and the year before. When the Doctor and Lillian turn up to enjoy the games, they are horrified to see the shells the people have become. The next episode would be St. Anthony's Fire, written by Mark Gatiss. The Doctor and Lillian visit Petruchia, a planet famous for its beautiful ring system. They soon discover the rain-drenched foreign jungles are in turmoil. A vicious genocidal war is raging between the lizard-like natives. The ground itself is wrecked by mysterious earthquakes, and an unknown force is moving inexorably forward, devastating anything in its path. With time running out, the Doctor must save the people of Petruchia from their own terrible legacy before the wrath of St. Anthony's Fire is visited upon them all. The next episode would be The Deadliest Fear, written by Kate Orman. The TARDIS is in flight when all of a sudden everything stops. The lights go out, the console doesn't respond. The TARDIS is dead. The only way to fix this is to travel to the TARDIS's heart and restart the power. As the Doctor and Lillian head down multiple corridors, the Doctor soon finds himself lost and alone. However, somewhere inside the TARDIS is something the Doctor fears the most. It's time for the Doctor to finally confront and defeat his greatest fear. The final episode would be The Inevitable Fate, written by Mark Planck. The Doctor and Lillian land on Paltwine in the year 8971. The planet is about to be boiled by its own core, and though the colonised humans accept their inevitable fate, but the Doctor discovers a mystery behind a mysterious cult who carry out sacrifices to stop the destruction of the planet. Assassins from Artavath City arrive to control the fleeing colonists, and now the Doctor must put a stop to the troubles on this planet before it is too late. Season 34 was the fourth and final season for Stephen Garwood as producer and Colin Brake as script editor, as well as it being the second and last season for Chloe Annette of companion Lillian Jones. Garwood and Brake wanted her departure to be a similar one to Katie's exit in season 30, as they wanted a reason for Lillian leaving the Doctor on very bad terms. And now let's get into the episode. The first episode will be The Reckoning Shadows, written by Stephen Moffat. The Doctor takes Lillian to the largest library in the known universe. They find it empty of human life, but with countless other living beings. When an archaeological expedition arrives in the library, they find themselves enthralled in a conspiracy which quite literally saved thousands. This is basically Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead from our own timeline, but with one difference, and that is the character of River Song isn't in it. The next episode would be No Fiend Evil, written by Russell T Davies. Arriving back in 1996, everything seems perfect, as Lillian enjoys some time back in her normal life, but everything seems too perfect in an almost sinister way. People are more like robots and Lillian feels rather uncomfortable. The Doctor knows something is going on, but of course there is no fiend evil until the great intelligence has made itself known. The next episode would be The Roundheads, written by Mark Gatiss. With the Civil War won, the parliamentarians are struggling to hang on to power, but plans are being made to rescue the defeated King Charles from his prison. Lillian becomes an unwitting accomplice in the plot to rescue the king. The Doctor can't help because he's been arrested and sent to the Tower of London, charged with conspiracy. Can the Doctor escape and rescue Lillian while making sure that history remains on its proper course? The next episode will be The Scales of Injustice, written by Gary Russell. The Doctor is reunited with Brigadier Bambera when he and Lillian arrive in 2004, but soon after a boy goes missing and a policewoman starts drawing cave paintings, the Doctor suspects the Silurians are back. After the Silurians wake from their ancient slumber, the Doctor, Lillian and the Brigadier are caught up in a conspiracy to exploit UNIT's achievements, a conspiracy that reaches deep into the heart of the British government. The next episode would be The Sands of Time, written by Justin Richards. The Doctor is in Victorian London with Lillian, a city shrouded in mystery. When Lillian is kidnapped in the British Museum, the Doctor has to unlock the answers to a series of ancient questions. His quest leads him across continents and time as an ancient Egyptian prophecy threatens future England. To save Lillian, the Doctor must foil the plans of the mysterious Sadan Raful, but as mummies stalk the night, an ancient terror stirs in its tomb. The next episode would be The Room with No Doors, written by Kate Orman. The Doctor and Lillian travel to 16th century Japan, a country gripped by civil war. As feudal lords vie for control, anything could tip the balance of power. So when a god falls out the sky, everyone wants it. As villagers are healed and crops grow far too fast, the Doctor and Lillian try to find the secret of the miracles before the two rival armies can start a war over who owns the god. Lillian soon finds herself alone, except for an alien slaver, a time-travelling Victorian inventor, a gang of demons, an old friend with suspicious motives, a village full of innocent bystanders, and several thousand samurai. With the Doctor, someone has to take up the challenge of adventure and stop the god from falling into the wrong hands. The next episode would be Metal Warfare, written by Mark Platt. The TARDIS lands during the time of the French Revolution. The Doctor and Lillian soon learn that the inhabitants of a small French village outside Paris are living in fear as they hear rumours of the Metal Men, creatures from another world who kidnap the villagers in the dead of night. But when the Doctor soon meets these metal men, he realises that the world is in danger. This would have been a Cyberman story, and it would have been quite a good one too. We learn that the Cybermen have crashed in a forest near Paris and have soon taken up residence in a nearby village to start converting the villagers. And the Doctor would have to try and stop them, obviously. However, this would have been a quite dark story. We would have seen the horrors of the French Revolution and the horrors of Cyberman conversion. But at the end of the episode, the Doctor would stop the Cybermen with an EMP, killing all the Cybermen and destroying all their technology. Overall, this would have been one of the best Cybermen stories of all time, and would have been one of the best of the Eoin Griffiths era. The final episode would be The Web of Time, written by Colin Brake. When Lillian was a child, she witnessed the death of her best friend. She would do anything to change it. Anything. She goes back in time and stops her from dying, but accidentally kills herself in the process. The Doctor must undo the changes that have been made, or time will unwind itself and chaos will break loose. This would have been the final story for Chloe Annette as Lillian Jones. We would have seen that Lillian would accidentally kill herself by trying to save her best friend from dying. During this time, the web of time starts to act and time begins to crack, which involves the Doctor having to go to Gallifrey and using an ancient Gallifreyan device to try and stop what's going on. He finds Lillian in the afterlife during this, and he hears a voice in his head. It's Lillian's voice, and she keeps saying in a demonic voice, "Don't go back and change it." However, the Doctor ignores the voice in his head, and he saves Lillian from dying. However, when Lillian soon finds out about this, near enough to the end of the episode, she's furious with the Doctor, and even though the Doctor tries to justify it, she doesn't want to hear it. She wants to go home. The Doctor drops her off back in 1996, and as Lillian is leaving the TARDIS, she tells the Doctor she hopes their paths never cross again. And then he leaves in the TARDIS a broken man. By the end of season 34 in 1997, Doctor Who's popularity had reached those similar to the heights of the Tom Baker era. This was due to the ever-popular 8th Doctor and the very popular 9th Doctor. One thing was for sure though, Doctor Who's popularity wouldn't stop here. In fact, the show's new wave of popularity was about to get ever bigger.